Qaeda Tic-Tac-Toe. The origins of this piece, I guess, originated in Troy, Alabama, where my grandfather owned several gas stations. He distributed gasoline down here in South Alabama and a little bit in Georgia and Mississippi along the Black Belt. And that's how I learned to drive. I would sit in his lap at 6 years old driving a gasoline truck. Now, can you imagine doing that today down the highway? And then I had my Palestinian girlfriend, Juliana Seraphim, for many years in France and other places. And my study of minoring in political science, how it related to the international economy. Now, with the Qaeda Tic-Tac-Toe, as in the American Indians, the savages were actually the Europeans, but they named the Indians the savages, I guess to cover themselves. The same way, when you are invading an oil-rich country and you find resistance of the people, they're terrorists because they're resisting the attack of a Western world taking their oil, taking their heroin supply, as in Afghanistan, and these multi-billion-dollar products, raw materials. I mean, this is a history of the world. When the English and the French and the Dutch were colonizing and sending Columbus to get America and to get the land and all the natural resources, that's really what Qaeda, to me, Tic-Tac-Toe is about. Having lived in Lebanon, Syria, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, in the homes of the Muslim friends, and seen how devout they are. And in Algeria, I had a friend that was a teacher, a French teacher there, and we would visit a lot of the homes, and they did not, the hotels didn't serve alcohol. It was very strict to keep the reins on the people from going too far into the Western society because they considered it corrupt. I mean, with all the things that were going on in the Western world that have really brought the country down, and we think it's going up and we're free. Well, how free do you want to get? So, you know, there's a balance. So Qaeda Tic-Tac-Toe was really very special to me. And my sister lived in Venezuela. She was married to the head of DuPont, Venezuela, which is very closely connected to petroleum, and was, of course, part of OPEC. And that was the subject of many of my works, too, is the petroleum countries. Having been there, lived with Mexico, Pemex Towers, what more could be interesting about a country, as an American, to grab their oil supply? And so I decided to do this piece in two parts, having 1 foot in the art department at the University of Alabama and 1 foot in ROTC, you know, the hippie and the right-wing Republican. So I'm both. I think everybody has a little of everything in them, and why limit yourself to either when you can be both? You look at the advantages of one thing and try to promote the advantages and keep away from the negative. So in doing this, I thought, suicide bombers, let's put them over here. And so I did portraits of friends, like Bruce Larson over here. I shot a whole bunch. I would take the drawings, take them out to the shooting range, pin them up on the little tags, and start way back, and I would blast them. So these are bullet holes. It's part of the technique. Technique has always been interesting to me. And then when I would shoot, I had to pull this one right up close and get him one right in the head just to kill him, because I really love Bruce. And this is Adam Mulligan and Mike Lyons has a gallery in Fairhope. This was a Troy student. So I did this piece in Troy, a lot of these pieces in Troy. And I think the students here helped me build the square frames. And of course, the gold is symbolic of money, and the oil dripping down and covering everything is a symbol of money as well. So the new gold is oil. And you see here that somehow these little switches could set off a bomb. And the mat knife, which I think took down a plane in the World Trade Center catastrophes. I think it was a box cutter that, like, they held the hostages and there it was. So this was the negative side, to where we can never gain, we can't win in war. We can't win with hatred. Now here, you've got flowers. The pansies in the center. Now that can be translated as sissy in the old deep south. It can be translated as an eye. It can be translated as so many, like in Ireland, the three pansies, cotton, the camellia, the pomegranate was a symbol of fecundity, reproduction in the Middle East. And so I picked all of these symbols that to me were positive, put the gold and the oil, and guess what? Tic-tac-toe. The diagonal, the piece or the flower children of the 60s generation. I was in college at the University of Alabama in 1968, which was the big event in Paris and around the world for the hippie movement or the peace movement or whatever it was called, and had one foot in that camp, and like I said, one foot in the ROTC camp. So you understand both sides. The winner and the loser. So I think this is one of the most political pieces and economically geared pieces, in spite of all the crosses and the gold, which is just a symbol of money, and a beautiful shiny metal. It's also using the other elements and what we discard sometimes as not valuable is sometimes the most valuable because it's spiritual. So I think we have to look at the spiritual and the materialistic side of every society and see how they measure up. Well, the United States is way up there materialistically, as you can hear by my conversation. I'm obviously, to a Hindu from India, a materialist. But to, let's say, an English person, I'm a spiritualist, because they started all this stuff, really, and by enslaving countries and doing all the stuff that the English have done. And I love the English, but just looking at the raw history of the world, it's incredible how we have somehow disregarded the spiritual part of a country or a human life. And I think that we should, like several good examples, Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, to Christ, to Buddha, Muhammad, have really brought this into flower, is let's concentrate a little bit more on the spiritual side of life. And I think this is what this piece says. It kind of gives a definition of the money and winning and losing.